Welcome to this lesson on liturgy, and today we are going to be talking about the intersection of worship and culture. So the stuff that we do in here, in the nave, in this holy place set apart, and then the stuff that we engage in out there in the wider world. In 1996, Lutherans from all around the world in the Lutheran World Federation gathered in Nairobi, Kenya, to talk about the intersection of worship and culture. And they came up with the idea that perhaps there's 4 ways that this intersects. One way would be transcultural, another way would be crosscultural, another way might be contextual, and then the 4th and final way, countercultural. Let's unpack this a little bit and imagine how these are swirling to stay in equilibrium across all congregations around the world, as all congregations are constantly engaging with the world inside the doors and the world outside the doors. Sometimes they might be especially transcultural, and other times they might be especially cross-cultural. And see how it keeps balancing out. We keep moving in this world so that we can have a balance between all of these 4 forces at work in how we engage inside and outside all holy spaces. Contextual is when we are specific to a particular place, and that might be the particular congregation that we're worshiping in, or maybe it's the city or area of the country that we're worshiping in. And it might be reflected in the wildflowers that are gathered to come and brighten our worship space, or perhaps it's liturgical art that people have made in this community. Or perhaps it's a particular piece of furniture that has been handed down for generations in this place of worship. It's particular to this place, contextual. Worship is transcultural. That means it transcends many cultures all at the same time. So that would be things that are shared within all Lutheran churches and likely even all Christian churches. Like, for instance, the Holy Bible. While we see this written in English, think of the many translations that the Word of God, the mind, the logos of God is translated into. And that's a centering principle, something shared across many cultures, transcultural. Worship is always cross-cultural. It means that we stretch beyond borders and boundaries to better understand other cultures other than our own. You might notice that in the music. There might be music that is shared here that is from Korea or Spain or Australia, New Zealand, or Germany in the time of the Reformation. We see that visually in the instruments that are here, the classic traditional organ, or perhaps djembe drums from Africa. Cross-cultural is when we're able to experience God's presence in the culture of someone that is not our own, our native culture. It might also be in languages that we share or hear the Word of God in, or perhaps even the bread that we eat on Sunday morning. Cross-cultural. Worship is always countercultural. It resists the forces from the outside world that contend against God's will. And it does that in big and small ways. It does that in ways that it works and prays and hopes for justice, for right relationship with all people. That's a different voice than what we hear in the wider world. But then the small ways are things as simple as standing up and singing together. There's no other place that we do that across the generations. And praying together and sharing the peace with one another. Countercultural. This all helps us better understand the church in worship is always in a constant state of movement, but centered on Christ, always made new.